All right, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and today I want to talk a little bit about the dollar. I got a little bit of crypto adoption to show you, which I'm excited to show you, so I'll show you that. And we'll do a few charts, a few market cycles, and a little bit of building awareness for what we could expect to see over the coming weeks. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, sit back, relax, hit that like button, and we'll get into this right now. Is this the last shake? Do we just need to hang in there a little bit longer for what is possibly the last shake? James here says even higher rates, 4% on the 10-year, can't boost the USD anymore. FX market is convinced that the Fed is going to back to easing soon. The biggest and most legitimate threat to the bullish case remains interest rates. The 10-year Treasury yield index, as you can see here, approaching a level where it could be looking to break out higher. Remember, the threat is not where rates are now, but the possibility of them moving significantly higher. Also worth noting, possibility is different from probability. As of yesterday, we saw one of the largest injections of global liquidity that we have seen in a very long time, on par with some of the biggest weeks seen in the past 6 months. Those of you with high attention to detail will notice there is more liquidity in the system today than when Bitcoin and the S&P were at their prior all-time highs. QT? More like QE. So pause your screen here and study this chart. How is your trading plan going since 16K? I think it's safe to say ours has been going excellent. But the majority is always wrong, right? The majority is always struggling. Many investors either got this move massively wrong or are still sidelined, waiting for lower numbers. Now, that doesn't mean they can't come, but I would think the bottom is most likely in, and I'll show you a few charts that agree with me towards the end of this episode. We have massive Bitcoin mining centers having been opened in Siberia, according to the Russian Department of Energy Minister. We also have mass adoption moving to another level for Bitcoin. As you can see, Fidelity Crypto is coming soon. The Visa vice president has confirmed the company will continue to partner with Bitcoin and crypto firms, denying reports that said otherwise. So if you did happen to see any of the FUD that came out saying that Visa was going to abandon Bitcoin and crypto, remember, if they don't adopt and embrace this technology, they will be left behind because people can just transact peer-to-peer. They have no choice but to adopt this stuff because otherwise they will become obsolete. And as if that's not enough, BlackHawk, one of the world's largest payment providers, is going to offer Bitcoin gift cards at US retailers. Another way to onboard new Bitcoiners into the space. In other news, if you were one of the accounts that were affected by the Voyager collapse, possibly some good news here for you. A new court filing revealed that 97% of Voyager customers voted in favor of Binance US, the US state branch of the world's largest crypto exchange, buying the assets of the bankrupt crypto lending firm. So, good chance that we could possibly see some of these holders made whole again. Bitcoin is undervalued. Look at this right here, this on-chain value map. These lines denote heavily undervalued, undervalued, fair value, overvalued, heavily overvalued. As of right now, we are at the undervalued level, slightly below it, with a long way to go to being heavily overvalued. Bob Lucas says, imagine being scared or worried after looking at this Bitcoin monthly chart. He says, cut out the noise and widen the lens. The only roadblock intermediate term is just an equity market decline late March, early April. So if we click into this chart first, and then I'll show you what he's talking about with regards to the equity markets, you can see cycle low, 4-year cycle low, 4-year cycle low, and now again, 4-year cycle low. Not only that, we are above the 10 monthly moving average on 2 monthly candles so far. I think to be expecting a undercut of this low, a new low to come, a rollover is simply incorrect. I think if you're one of those people, you're simply on the wrong side. And that is, of course, what Bob Lucas is alluding to here with this chart. He did, of course, mention that the only roadblock intermediate term is just an equity market decline late March, early April. So if you're wondering what that might look like, this is what he's talking about. Bob Lucas has been calling for this for some time. He thinks that we should be due a daily cycle low out of here, but he thinks that will left translate, meaning the high will come on the left-hand side of the midpoint of the cycle, and then we will roll over into what he believes will be the final cycle low of this bear market. He also believes this is going to be the weekly cycle low. It's important to point out that the weekly cycle low could form any time between now and slightly later of this, but this is how he sees the move in terms of the cycles. He only trades cycles, he doesn't trade structure. And therefore, if we were to get a bounce out of here that left translates and rolls over into one more daily cycle low, forming the weekly cycle low around the end of March, early April, this could produce a headwind for the Bitcoin price. So, with all this as our situational awareness, there's one more thing I'd like to show you. Here is a dollar chart for you, the US dollar index. As it stands, currently a sell side impulse has been triggered on a breakdown of this upward sloping support line. Since then, here it is in red. Since then, we have back tested it and looking to resume lower. So is that what's coming over the following days? Quite possibly. I would not be surprised to see this sort of chop around and then come up to touch the top of this. Equally, I would not be surprised to see this come down and trade along this blue upward sloping support line that's been support going back all the way here. Whether we quickly roll over from here or whether it takes a lot of chop, however it looks, and then we roll over, I do think we're going to roll over sometime between now and April. I do think we've seen the worst of this move. I do think risk is going to come on quite sharply. The yields are still pricing higher for longer, aren't they? So the big question is, what happens if at FOMC we only get a 25 basis point rate hike? Well, you know what happens. These are going to roll over, the dollar's going to roll over, and risk is going to come on very, very strongly. So I think this does set us up quite nicely into FOMC. However, it probably means we've got a couple of weeks of pain and chop before we can get trending to the upside again. I'll quickly click through the equity markets, but honestly, not a lot changed yesterday. So the S&P, as you can see, pretty much net sideways or slightly down, however you want to call it. The NASDAQ, net sideways or slightly down, however you want to call it. The Dow Jones, I've got to zoom in a bit here. Look at this. Can you see that? That was the low of yesterday's wick. And here is my stop. So we missed it by a few ticks. We're still in. I think most likely we are going to have to pay a stop on this position. If we do, that's fine. This one is lined up for when we get a breakout above the top of this, assuming that can come at some point. As I often say on this channel, my goal is to be the most transparent, the realest trader on YouTube. I'll show you every win, every loss, every position, every mistake. So we're still in for now. I think with hindsight, I've sort of read this as a breakout retest resumption, then a bit of sideways chop. But I think there's a lesson to be learned here. I think if your trade doesn't go immediately in your favor, then it's often best to just cut it. Once we had this sort of situation going on, that was fine. But I think here would have been a good idea to get neutral again, rather than just sit here and wait through all of this. Anyway, we're still in. This could still bounce, but I think most likely we are going to have to pay a stop on this trade here. So that's fine. That is what it is. The Russell 2K. Again, net sideways, isn't it? Still doing a whole lot of nothing. Breakout from here, and it's a long from me, but we're not there yet. The same is true of the NASDAQ, isn't it? Breakout of here and a long from me, but you already know the score, I'm sure. VIX, is this going to be gapping up and going? Is this going to start to morph into a more bearish look for stocks? Well, it hasn't done that yet. As of right now, still contained, isn't it? So, doesn't speak to a volatility event, doesn't speak to a stock market crash. The FTSE 100 still underneath this red downward sloping resistance line here. So a break above that could be a long, but for right now, what I'm hoping to see is just a little bit more respect in this line, hopefully get underneath here, and then we can look to break out at a later date. I think there'll be a much more higher probability setup. I was talking yesterday about adding crypto exposure and moving stops up, but I just haven't seen the follow through that I'd like to see yet. So as it stands, we've still got this stop down here. Haven't modified any of these positions that I was talking about modifying because how could I? Look at the justification for this. Where is your justification? You know, these are waddling out sideways. Some of these look worse than others. So you could argue maybe this is breakout retest looking for resumption higher. If we get that today, then I can add my positions, right? But Marathon is firing early warning signs. If you look at Marathon here, Marathon took out this swing low from the other day. So this is not a very good look. Now, my position's in so much profit, I have no problem pushing this trade for a little bit more. It's these lows here that I would not want to be taking out. Take those lows out and we have to go back to a neutral and take a bit of profit on this trade. Hopefully, what we can see is a bit of follow through and a breakout, in which case, everything I said about moving stops up and adding exposure is still absolutely valid. But at the same time, if we hop into the crypto charts, whilst we added a position yesterday and moved the stop up for Bitcoin based on our cycle low, this is still kind of chopping around sideways, isn't it? This is still not doing a whole heap of pushing off. So I would like to see much more follow through from Bitcoin before I can get really confident. And that is exactly why, whilst I'm still eager to add positions, whilst I still believe this is a new cycle and it would be highly unusual for Bitcoin to fail this early and come down and take out that low, you know, I can't control what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. So I just have to remain unbiased and flexible to all outcomes. I wouldn't be at all surprised. It's my expectation that this will resolve to the upside. But like I said, if the market comes down and takes out this prior low, if this position ends up being stopped, something is going on, something is wrong with the price action. This is not behaving like a cycle should behave. You know, we should be seeing strength out of here. And so if the market tells me that it's time to get neutral again, it might well be time to get neutral again. No changes for Ethereum. As you can see, stops move up, positions added, looking for a retest and resumption off of this breakout line, which would be nice. The cycle tells us that's what should happen. But again, if it's not going to do that, then you have to respect what the market's telling you. MATIC still right into both this downward sloping resistance line and upward sloping support line. So we'll see what happens with MATIC over the coming days. Zcash still looking to do a whole lot of nothing, but that's fine. Looks to be some sort of accumulation before I move higher, I would think. But that, of course, remains to be seen. And lastly, natural gas, kind of thinking about taking a long here. It seems like we are flipping this red line into support. Hopefully we can do something like this, get a pullback and then go off of there. So that would be quite a nice setup. Still looking to get long, a little bit more patience for natural gas. If you found value here today, I'd appreciate it if you drop a like on the video. Subscribe if you're not already, and turn the notifications on if you want to continue to get updates on all these markets in real time as a pro swing trader. I hope you have a great day. I suspect this week is going to continue to be a whole lot of choppy sidewaysness, but that's okay. In the meantime, look after yourselves. Take care from me. All the best. Cheers. Bye.